Hey guys, it's your favorite Italian shitpost review channel, Gamertard, and today we're gonna have an epic Halloween special. Very cool. This is gonna be probably the scariest video on my channel yet, so be warned. We're gonna be talking about albums, music, things that you listen to. Basically, the idea is that we're gonna be taking a look at albums that fit the Halloween season. It doesn't have to be Halloween branded or released around October. It just needs to fit the Halloween vibe, I should say. But yeah, we're going to look at 5 albums and I'm going to review them. That's about it. So without further ado, let's get into it. Very spooky, be warned. Alright, so we got a pretty unique album here. This is Rainbow Bridge 3 by Cemetery. So for a bit of an introduction to Cemetery, he's a trap, black metal, and noise artist all in one, with a little bit of emo as well, along with alternative rock, I guess. But overall, this album is basically like, imagine a club trap album, like Chief Keef, for instance, with the filter of a 90s black metal record, with plenty of distorted noise throughout this thing. And of course you have Cemetery himself, who has like his signature emo vocals and like dark monotone voice as he just drags his voice all throughout these crazy distorted beats all over this thing. Now the sound of this record is a mess. It is a complete chaotic mess. So much to the point where it's honestly kind of hard to listen to at points. Like I remember I first trying to get into this thing, I literally couldn't. I had to take breaks multiple times. And I honestly couldn't really listen to this thing with headphones on. That's how loud it is. And it's such an impressive and oppressive listen all at once. Like, it's an album that will blow you away and just have you fucking amazed by, like, just the way that it's put together. Like, Cemetery is able to take this noise album, these industrial noises, all this distortion, and he's able to make a pretty catchy hook out of it. Like, there's tons of great hooks, tons of hilarious, over-dramatic, edgy lyrics. It's basically like a parody of itself almost. And it's with that level of self-awareness, and it's with that tight production where I feel like this thing really comes together and works quite well, actually. There's moments where this album can genuinely be really scary and creepy and honestly hard to listen to. And then there's moments where this album is stupid, hilarious, and it has tons of really catchy hooks, cool production, all that sort of shit. It really is a controlled mess, and when you get used to all the effects and all the distortion and all the fucking wild beats on this album, shit kind of bops. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it's like the more I listen to this album, the more bangers I'm pulling out of it. So overall, the album goes hard as hell, quite literally, and yeah, I love it. I think it's a fucking incredible album. Some of my favorite tracks include Chainsaw Party, Necromancer, Creeping Through the Woods, Skin Mask 2, I'm a Sinner, Crucifixion, and Skin Carver, but in reality I feel like I could name the entire track list, or just a whole nother set of tracks I haven't mentioned yet, and I could still be good with mentioning favorite tracks. So overall, yeah, it's a pretty awesome horrorcore album. If you want like a modern horrorcore album that's pretty fucking scary but also really fun, then you gotta check this thing out. It's really awesome. Also, shout out to DJ Sorrow. DJ Sorrow is fucking hilarious, and I love all of his moments on this album. So currently for the rating, I'm feeling a strong 4 or a 4.5 out of 5, of course. By the time this video is uploaded, I'll decide between those two scores. So yeah, incredible album, pretty fucking epic. One of the best of the decade so far. Actually, come back to this album in 5 years and see how influential it is. Also, check out Grave House by Cemetery, that's great too. Also, before I forget, I found out today that the album surprisingly sounds the best in my car. I don't know why, but like, it just sounds the most spread out while I'm in my car, so I'm able to like hear the beat and the vocals pretty well, and it doesn't sound too loud. So listening to this album is actually the best in my car. Now, would I recommend it while driving? Hell no. But it is something to note. Alright, next up we got Suicide by Suicide. It's a self-titled album, 1977. It's a synth punk album. And it is one of the creepiest and most interesting albums of the 70s. So the sound of this thing is pretty weird. It's kind of like new wave, actually. Like, imagine new wave, but it's creepy and it has no energy, but in a good way. So basically you have drum machines and synthesizers being the main backbone of a lot of these songs, with very weird, tone-deaf, monotone vocals to add to those instrumentals. So basically what you get here is a very simple, yet very creepy and atmospheric listen. You see, the structure of this album is very basic. It kind of has very basic song structures. Instrumentally, it's super simple. I mean, like, these drum machine patterns are nothing too crazy. They kind of have a bit of a fast tempo, though. But, I mean, like I said, it's like nothing too crazy about this album yet. It's all the subtleties that just stack on top of each other, and it's a really intense listen. The drum machines and synthesizers really have a fascinating quality to them. I find myself almost getting hypnotized by the way this album sounds, just getting entranced by these repetitive grooves and melodies and just a bunch of weird experimental 70s stuff. Keep in mind, like, these electronic elements were very new at the time, so to take a look back in this 1977 context and to see these electronics being used in kind of awkward yet revolutionary ways is pretty fascinating. And I genuinely find this album to be pretty entertaining, all things considered. I mean, sure, it's weird and creepy, but it's got some pretty catchy melodies, and I feel like if you really get behind the grooves of the synths, you can actually get pretty into this thing. Vocals here are pretty scary, all things considered. They actually kind of border on spoken word, actually, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, like, just the way this guy just talks is really creepy. It's really off. There's even a couple of moments where he actually moans and whimpers throughout this thing, which is really creepy. The creepiness definitely carries over into the lyrics, too. It's kind of hard to describe this album lyrically, but there is some subtle, like lyrics about politics in America. Now, I'm not really qualified to get into that stuff, but it's definitely there on a couple of tracks. And then there's other lyrics that are just straight up weird and odd. There's a lot of weird phrases. There's parts that aren't even lyrics. It's just him making noises. And it works. It works extremely well. It's something that will turn you off, but also pull you in at the same time. And then finally, there's the song Frankie Teardrop, which is probably the creepiest song I've ever heard in my entire life. Or at least one of them. The song is fucking terrifying. It's 10 minutes straight. It's atmospheric as hell. It has one of the most fucked up storylines I've ever heard in all of music. It is just a fantastic track. One of the best songs ever made. But also one of the fucking scariest. I cannot believe that song is on this album. But it is, and it's one of the most insane experiences ever. But basically, you got one incredible experience song backed with a bunch of other smaller, catchy, weird, creepy songs. And experimental too. It's like all these different elements, they come together. This album, it's pretty fucking based, I have to admit. It's pretty epic. It's overall just a terrifying, weird little experiment that kind of comes together in an oddly entertaining experience. For my rating, I'm feeling a 4.5 out of 5. I actually had this as a 5 at one point. I don't know if I'm ever going to bump it back up to that, but it is an excellent album. It really is. It's actually kind of like like both an early electronic and an early industrial album in a weird way. Like this sounds like a Nine Inch Nails album if it was made in the 70s. That's the type of shit that we're dealing with here. It is also just one of the best albums of the early punk movement. So yeah, give this a listen. It's an essential. All right, and next up we have Whole Lotta Red by Playboi Carti, which is another trap album, but unlike Cemetery, you can probably play this at a party. Maybe. It depends on the party, but you might be able to get away with this. Because, surprisingly, Whole Lotta Red is actually somewhat of a mainstream album. Now, of course, this is still a Playboi Carti project, so you have Carti himself, which just has, like, this really weird baby voice. It's kind of hard to describe Carti's vocals, but it's very distinct. It's a little high-pitched. It's very expressive. Also aggressive when it needs to be. And you have the beats themselves, which are very synth-heavy, but also have very loud bass and loud trap drums. It's definitely a banger type of album. The lyrics, for the most part, are extremely quotable. There are just so many lines off this thing, it just sticks in my mind. And it typically isn't just a couple of lines for the whole album. It's basically a couple of lines for every single song, or at least most of the songs here. It's actually kind of impressive just how many quotables Carti is able to come up with on this album. Something about the ad-libs combined with the weird shit Carti says really adds a crazy energy to this album. The lyrics on this album are all around just fucking crazy. There's just so much shit going on here. A lot of it is fucking hilarious. Like, I just find myself, like, just quoting Carti lyrics all the time. In fact, like, this album in particular will have you quoting the lyrics constantly because they're just so fucking funny. But there's also a really dark element to them. Lots of lyrics about murder, death, drug abuse, his brother passing away. Just a bunch of crazy shit under the surface. And if you really look into it, it gets pretty dark. You then have the whole vampire and punk aesthetic, which you see in the album cover, the music videos, Carti's fashion, and even the lyrics themselves. Those reasons are, for one big reason why I chose to pick this album for this video, but I feel like it really adds to this album. It definitely adds this dark, kind of gothic aesthetic to this thing, but it also helps the album go even harder because now you have this whole punk aspect thrown into it, which I think is pretty interesting. So the fact that Playboi Carti was able to have a punk-inspired trap album with a vampire aesthetic that has tons of lyrics that are both memeable and dark, and have these really heavy, hard-hitting beats, and on top of that, actually have some pretty successful mainstream songs and to get some, like, pretty big numbers on Spotify with this thing is kind of crazy if you think about it. Like, this doesn't feel like an album to be mainstream, but the fact that it kind of is, at least a little bit, like at least with a song like Sky, it's fucking crazy. It really is. So overall, I think this is a great album. I don't think it's as good as Die Lit. I think Die Lit is just the more diverse, more entertaining project. It also has a ton of features, which definitely adds to the whole variety aspect of Die Lit, which is another thing to this album. It's not got a lot of features. In fact, there's only like 3 features on the entire album: Kanye West, Kid Cudi, and Future, which are all great, by the way. But I feel like one of the best aspects of Die Lit was just how much variety and diversity you got with all the features, and I really feel like Whole Lotta Red could have used a couple more features, at least Lil Uzi, which I think would actually be really cool on this album. Sadly, he wasn't on this album, but whatever, like, more features, and maybe a bit more diversity in the beats, you know, maybe more samples, I think, could make this album more interesting. But basically, what I want from the next Carti project is, like, what he's doing with A Whole Lotta Red. Just a little bit more diversity, you know, like more interesting beats, more features, you know, maybe a bit more nuance in the lyrics, just a little bit more. And I feel like if Carti does that, he could make an album that's not only as good as Die Lit, but maybe even better than Die Lit. But yeah, that's about it. I think this album is pretty great. I'm gonna give it a solid 4 out of 5. I think that's how I'm feeling on this thing, and yeah. 4 favorite tracks, I'm gonna say Jump Out the House, Stop Breathing, Metamorphosis, Vamp Anthem, No Sleep, Feel Like Dying, and Sky. Wake up, it's the first of the month. I brush my teeth and count up. Alright, so we covered some creepy stuff, some fun stuff, and then some weird stuff. I want to talk about something different, and that is something extremely depressing. This is Halloween 4 by Billy Cobb. So Billy Cobb is a music YouTuber, but he's also a musician who has a very weird and diverse discography. So I've been a fan of him for quite a while now, both his YouTube videos and his music, but I gotta say one thing that really stands out about his career is his Halloween series. You have Halloween 1, which is an EP, Halloween 2 is an album, Halloween 3 is an EP, Halloween 4 is an album, Halloween 5 is an EP, and then Halloween 6 is a single with 2 songs attached to it. However, this one right here is often considered to be the best of the series, Halloween 4. In fact, I would go a step further and say that this is straight up Billy Cobb's best album. Now, will he top it? I think it's a good chance that he will. At least one day he probably will. But as it stands, I believe this is his best work ever. Now, this is where the complicated part comes in. You see, I can't really say a whole lot about Halloween 4. That's because Halloween 4 is a straight-up concept album that tells a pretty interesting and complex story, and I really don't want to spoil anything about that said story. Now, I will start off by saying that the story here is fantastic. It is so well done to the point where it honestly feels like a movie, or an audio movie, but you get what I mean. It's extremely immersive, and it tells the story very well. To the point where I can almost say this is just a rock opera. Now, this album does get pretty scary. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything about it, but it is there. The most important thing about the story, though, is that it is extremely depressing. Again, I'm not going to go into details, but trust me, this album, it hits pretty hard. It is a very gloomy, depressing little Halloween album. It takes a holiday that's known for being fun and just drags you the fuck down. It's a downer of an album, but it is done extremely well, and it is a very interesting story. It definitely extends to the sound as well. Basically, Billy Cobb is known for a bunch of different things, but I think he succeeds best when he tries to go for like an emo type of sound. This album in particular kind of goes for like this acoustic Midwest emo type of vibe, which I really like. I think it does it super well. Now, the album does experiment. Like, there are moments where it kind of has like ambient vibes. There's some moments where it gets heavy. And then there's just some weird experimental stuff thrown in there. There's also moments where the album does get a little more energetic, a little more upbeat. But for the most part, it has kind of like this gloomy, sad acoustic stuff, which I think it does pretty damn well, and it does stand out in Billy Cobb's discography. So overall, this is a great, depressing, but extremely well-made Halloween album that, yet again, I cannot spoil too much, but please listen to it. It's really damn good, and I do enjoy it quite a bit. My rating is going to be like a solid 4 out of 5. I think it's a good rating for this. And also the album cover is pretty fucking cool. I really like the cover a lot. Also, as a bit of a side note, not only do I hope Halloween 7's good, but I really hope Billy Cobb gets on making vinyl of some of his albums, as I think this one in particular would be pretty cool to own physically. Okay, enough of that weird stuff, enough of the depressing stuff, enough of the scary stuff. Let's actually cover something that you can play at a fucking party. This is Dead Man's Party by Oingo Boingo. This album fucking rules. Hell yeah. Now, this one's definitely going to be the shortest review out of all of them because there really isn't too much to say. And that's not to say this album, like, lacks in quality, because it absolutely doesn't. I'm just saying, like, what it goes for, it's pretty self-explanatory. Basically, what you have here is a bunch of fun, catchy as hell new wave songs that kind of relate to the theme of death in some sort of way. Or if it's not death, then just some sort of weird horror theme. But basically, you have like the Halloween party stuff, you know, like all the horror stuff, but it's kind of covered in like this fun 80s party type of vibe. So it's like, this really is the perfect Halloween party record in my opinion. It's not too creepy, it's not too weird, it just has the right amount of everything for when it comes to Halloween music, and it's just super entertaining and enjoyable on top of that. The instruments on this album really pop. You got synths, you got guitars, drums, everything just sounds so vibrant, so groovy. Danny Elfman himself is a fantastic vocalist. The choruses on this album are insanely catchy. It's basically got everything it needs to be a fantastic pop record. And like I said before, like it perfectly fits into like this fun Halloween party type of vibe it's going for. Or maybe it's going for more of a Day of the Dead type of feeling, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. I feel like it could fit both holidays, at least in my opinion. Really, the way this album is able to take themes of death and able to translate it pretty well into like a fun 80s pop party album is pretty damn impressive. And to be honest, the track list for this album is just fantastic. Like some of their best songs ever made are consistently on this album. The two biggest ones are definitely Dead Man's Party and Weird Science. Dead Man's Party in particular is like legit one of the best songs I think I've ever heard. It is such a fun song. I just love listening to it. It's one of the few songs that legit makes me want to dance. I don't actually dance though because I'm terrible at dancing, but damn it, does it make me want to. And then Weird Science, of course, is just fantastic. Really, all the songs are really damn good. Great even. Like, there's just so many great choruses. There's so much fun to listen to. The album's got just fantastic energy, really. So overall, I think it just does it for this album. I know this review is pretty short, but again, it's very self-explanatory. It's a fun, vibrant Halloween party album. I'm feeling a 4. I know that every album on this video I've given a 4 or a higher, but I mean, come on, man. It's Dead Man's Party. You can't argue with it. It's fun as shit. Ayo, shout out to all the dead people watching this video. You can always party with me if you want to. Alright, I think that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. That was pretty cool to do. It was the first time in a while trying to do album reviews, and I'm actually kind of happy with how they turned out. And if you guys actually want a part 2 to this video covering more Halloween albums, here's what can happen. If this video gets to 10 likes and you guys leave album suggestions in the comments, then I will make a part 2 to this video. So basically, leave a like and leave an album suggestion that fits the Halloween season, and if we get enough numbers, you know, for all that sort of stuff, for views, comments, and likes, like at least 5 suggestions and at least 10 likes, then I will make a part 2. I will. But it has to be by October 20th. So you better get to it. And also, just thanks for watching the video. Thank you so much for watching the video. I had fun making it. And that's about it. See ya.